their experience. There's an echo. We met for initially 3 weeks ago for what's called the Conceptual meeting workshop, where we just sit in a circle and we share thoughts or ideas that we have that may be inspired by a given theme. And then the following week, we give each other notes and feedback, and the following week we meet again. This time we present our stories to each other as we would in front of a crowd, such as yourself. And it's called the Developmental Workshop. The stories that you will hear tonight are true. They happen to each of us, and they are told in the first person, and they will not extend 10 minutes. Those are the parameters that we work within. Other than that, there's some exceptions we make. We take some artistic licenses, but these are true stories. These are our stories, and we share them with each other because it's one of the most natural things that we can do as human beings, is to share stories of our lives with each other. It's how we relate. Enough about storytelling in general. I'm going to hand the mic over to Sabrina, and she's going to tell you a little bit about the theme.
That's okay. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to The Flame. Tonight's theme is Don't Stop Believing, Life's Journeys. The theme was inspired by our first meeting that we got together when I first met Stevie and Nicole. We talked about various subjects that we could have as a topic. So we came up, that was in February. So we came up, said we'll start our flame in July. So here we are. And so that's pretty much how we came up with the theme of, because we wanted to do stuff that kind of does with summer and everything like that. So here we are. So our first story will be my story. The title of my story is called The Orange Bathing Suit. Growing up in Los Angeles, going to the beach was a natural part of growing up there. And we went to the beach every Sunday in the summertime. And upon going, what I would do is, let me see, oh my God, I forgot. My mom, her friend Jeannie, that was her best friend, and her Jeannie's husband, they would pile us kids into their 1957 shark skin colored fishtail Chevy Impala. And the car had a stereo, a real record player. It played 45 vinyls. And so a real stereo, although you couldn't really listen to the actual record player while the car was rolling. We had to wait until the car wasn't rolling, and then we listened to The Temptations, Marvin Gaye, Little Stevie Wonder. He was Little Stevie Wonder at that time, and the Four Tops, just to name a few. The car had bench seats in it, to where my mom would sit on the passenger side. In the middle would be her best friend Jeannie, and Ernie was the driver. There was 5 of us kids. They would pile us in the back, and there was no seatbelts. So every time the car would turn right or left, we'd lean to the right and we'd lean to the left, and then we commence to say, "Get off of me, you're touching me," as kids always do. So then after that, what we would do is, so we're on our way to the beach. It was it seemed like the longest 20 miles because we were little kids. We were only going to San Pedro. So we would take the Harbor Freeway all the way to get off on Gaffey Street. When you get off on Gaffey Street, you have to make a big, hard left. And you go up the hill, and when we got up the hill, Ernie would stop by the local mom and pop stop and buy Wonder Bread, bologna and pressed ham, cherries, grapes, peaches, and plums. Also, he would buy the Sunshine Cookie Variety Pack that had sugar wafers, Vienna fingers, Hydrox, and Orbits. And my favorite were the Vienna fingers, and I grabbed those first from everybody. So, I forgot to tell you. My mom took me to the thrift store and bought me a bathing suit. The bathing suit was orange, and it had crisscross straps in the back. Of course, the 7-year-old would have the trouble trying to get the crisscross straps on. I just didn't understand the concept of crisscross straps. So my mom would always tell me, "Sabrina, come over here and let me help you put your bathing suit on." So Ernie would get to the to the Cabrillo Beach. So this is the name of the beach we would go to, and you'd have to go down the hill to get into Cabrillo Beach. And there was a park to the left when we got in. So he would pull over, and they would unload all the goodies and all the kids. Then he'd park his car very nearby so we could listen to the records, of course. So my mom and her friend would prepare lunch for us, and then us kids would have to wait for 30 whole minutes before we could get in the water, because everybody knows that you can't go swimming on a full stomach or you'll catch a cramp. So then finally the moms would say, okay kids, you guys can go now, and it was on. We would run and go and have, running, and so our moms would sit there and play cards. They would smoke cigarettes and drink sweet wine, because of course they were really young too. So then Cabrillo Beach is really huge. It had two sides, and sorry, I got a little going there. It had two sides and a big bathhouse in the middle. And on the left side, or the north side of the bathhouse, was the tide was low, and you could body surf, and you could find a lot of shells. Well, now the seashells are not as prevalent as they were then. When I was a kid, you could make cups and cups of seashells, but now they don't really have that many seashells on Southern California beaches anymore. And then, so when we got through with that, when we go in the bathhouse, you could go in there and they give you free towels to wipe off, and you could, get the sand off you. Then we would start with our shenanigans again. So then we go to the south side of the beach, and they had huge rocks, and there was a breakwater there. And we little kids would love to climb up on the beach, up on the big rocks, and we let the water just splash all over us. And of course that was very dangerous, but we didn't know. We were fearless. So just beyond the breakwater rocks were little caves. So we would creep into the cave slowly. Someone would yell, bats, bats, and we'd all run like heck. We just run and go crazy. And of course, we never saw any bats, but there probably really were bats in there. So then after that, connected to the bathhouse was a aquamarine museum. So we would go into the museum, and in there, they had many aquariums, and they had octopuses. They had miniature sharks, seahorses, the sea urchins, and we would press our little faces up against just to get a better view. So after that, we would go back over to the park and eat some more sandwiches and cookies and fruit. So now it's time to go home. Of course, I had a small, mild case of eczema. So then I'd have the itchies all over the place because I had sand everywhere. So then my mom would put me in the bathtub with this horrible smelly stuff called Physoderm. So I had to take a Physoderm bath. Then she would put calamine lotion, that pink calamine lotion, all over me. But the agony was worth it, because next Sunday I get to put my orange bathing suit back on and go to the beach again. So now, thank you very much. I'm glad you like my story. Tonight, next is Jackie. I'd like to introduce Jackie to you. Jacqueline Mance, I should say, is a teacher, a writer, and a yoga practitioner. She returns to the flame as a storyteller. She received her doctorate in educational leadership in 2018. Jackie's writings has been published in Inlandia Literary Journal, Voices de la Luna Literary Journal, and the Unprisoned Project blog. Jackie works at a continuation high school for RCOE as a professor and volunteers as a teacher in prisons across the world via the Prison Education Project. Jackie also published a co-written memoir entitled Embracing Dawn under her pen name, Marie Rodriguez. Jackie is currently working on her second book. This is her memoir about teaching. She wants to thank her husband, Joe Rodriguez, and her Boston Terrier babes for their support. Jackie, come on up.
I did it. Wow. That was the hardest part. Okay, picture this. It's August 7th, 2021, and schools have just opened after the pandemic. Now I'm coming back to teaching. I was an administrator for 2 long years and then asked to come back to teaching because I had a really hard time. So that summer, as I was transitioning from administration to teaching, I went to Miami Beach and I collected a lot of seashells. And as I thought of the beautiful souls that I was about to meet, I collected these seashells. So that first day of school, I'm in front of a bunch of students, kind of like this, and they were looking at me and I was looking back at them, and I took a deep breath. And I said, "Hi, my name is Dr. Jacqueline Mance. I go by Dr. Mance or Miss Mance. What do you like to be called?" And that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship with students, with teaching, and myself. Now, I wanted to go on a new journey, so I kind of set up my classroom differently than I had before. I'm a yoga teacher, so I had mats in the middle, and I had a circle of desks around. And if you walked in, you would smell eucalyptus from the diffuser and lavender from a candle. Now, you can't burn a candle, so I had it on a candle warmer, coffee warmer. Cheap trick. And I also, if you walked in, you would see ice cold water in the back, and every desk when students walked in would have a gratitude card and a mitt. Because I wanted students to feel grateful to be at school, to feel loved, and have fresh and clean breath. Right? So we first did the shells, and I still remember Jennifer, she wrote peace on her shell. Every student wrote like a mantra or an affirmation, and I opened my hand and my shell said peace. So right there, that was that connection. And after we did the shells, I read them a letter, and I wrote this letter as authentically and honestly as possible. And I talked about the depression, the anxiety, let's face it, trauma that we had all faced in the last 2 years during COVID. And I asked them to write their story and how they got to Ed Winslow Alternative Education Center in Desert Hot Springs, California, because I was teaching 11th and 12th grade English and world history. And so we did. And that night, as I watched Top Chef and read all these letters, my heart opened even wider. And I vowed to make the classroom a place of love, learning, and acceptance. So the first thing we did those first couple of weeks is we read the 4 agreements. Anyone know the 4 agreements? Be impeccable with your word, always do your best, don't make assumptions, and please don't take anything personally. And you know, transformation always starts with the self. So I decided to be impeccable with my word. And I've been a teacher for 20 years, but I was kind of a nag, okay, and authoritarian. And I decided I wanted to be more impeccable. So I did a couple of things. The first thing I did is I had these beautiful Tibetan bells that I would just strum. And I strummed them when students would say swear words or words that weren't positive to a conducive educational environment. So one of my students, Oriana, she's a beautiful soul. She's a poet, she's a writer, kindred soul. But she would love to walk into the classroom and be like, "It's fucking hot out there." And it is effing hot out there in Palm Springs. So, you know, she was right. But I would look at her and I would just strum the bells, and she caught it. I'd done it before, but she's like, "Miss Mance, are you strumming those bells because I am dropping F-bombs?" And I was like, "What do you think?" So what happened is they started strumming the bells. So a kid would say something and a kid would be like, and like, "Okay, I didn't have to do it, thank you." And then they started strumming them on me. I was like, "Oh, I need to be more impeccable with my word." So it became this kind of self-regulation without like a verbal redirection. And I did another thing. So that was one of my pet peeves, is swear words and profanity, probably because I did a lot as a youth. The second one was cell phones. And I realized that you could not take away cell phones at this point. We were wedded to our cell phones for the last 2 years. I just thought that would be foolish, so I was flexible first, and I had norms. But that didn't always work. So what I did is I used humor, and I have a little troll. His name is Emo. Hey, Mom. Hi, Emo. My dad gave him to me when, about 20 years ago before he died, he got him from the Claw at Denny's. And whenever the kids would use their cell phones, Emo would jump up, and he dressed in costumes. He had like a David Bowie outfit, a soccer outfit. Yeah, really. And I get it from Build-A-Bear. And a Dodger outfit. And he would jump on the desk and he'd say, "Yo, Mom, I thought this was a classroom. Why are they all using their cell phones?" And I look at him and say, "Point taken." So it was just a different way of, doing things with humor and love and lightheartedness. But the biggest thing I did, the most impactful thing that happened, was I listened rather than talked. because I realized that people needed to be listened to, both collectively and individually. And I still remember we were doing a lot of yoga, meditation, breathing, and one of my students walked up to me and he said, "Yo, Miss Nance," his name's Dylan, beautiful soul, and he said, "You know how you're always saying we need to talk about our feelings?" I was like, "Yes, Dylan." He's like, "I need someone to listen to me. I don't feel right." I said, "Well, let me go get the counselor." And he said, "Whoa, no. Will you listen to me?" What a gift. So I had this back room, and it had a big glass window, and you could close the door, but you could still see out and in, because I still needed to do that. And so I said, "Dylan, let's go to the back room, and I'm going to sit with you and listen. So kids, can you please do a quiet activity out of your folder, or writing activity?" "Yes, Miss Samantha." "Okay." And so then I sat in the back room and held that sacred space with him for 20 minutes, and listened and listened and listened some more. And that relationship to this day is very deep, because we connected. And so then students started asking me to listen to them, and then they started asking to be listened to each other. So it just became a stamily, and I know you want to know what a stamily is. Well, with those gratitude cards, I'm not a Pinterester, but I saw this on Pinterest, and so we wrote words with those gratitude cards. We would fill out like love, hope, stamily. And what a stamily is a student, and we came up with it together, the students and I, are students and teachers who support one another through times of struggle so they can be successful, so we can be successful. And it worked. And I know you say stamily, family, were they learning? Well, we all know that research shows that students learn from people who care about them and who they care about. So of course we were learning. We were reading books like The 4 Agreements, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And actually I had a whole Modern Writers of Color library that I got on donors.org from a bunch of donors, because when I was a kid their age, I didn't have books that were written by people that looked like me about me. And so I wanted to also give them that. So we were writing about everything we read. For history, I'd never been a history teacher. So I was like, well, I get bored easily. Can we do something fun with this? So we did a Back to the Future history. And so I was Maple J. Fox in my DeLorean, and we drove around the textbook wherever we wanted. We all just had to vote on it. And that really built engagement, community, fun. So we were doing debates, speeches. We even made a movie about the Russian Tsar. So that continued from October, November, December. January, we doubled in size because a lot of kids came back to school, and I was like, oh. It went great because the foundation was already set, a foundation of love and acceptance and community and family. And then in March, I received so many affirmations, and I thought I was a great teacher before. I'd been a teacher for 20 years in numerous districts. So then I got Teacher of the Year for my school, then I got Teacher of the Year of the District of 3, and then the Big Heart Award for Desert Hot Springs. And I was like, wow, but the kids didn't change, I changed. I became more affirming, accepting, and I was listening. Then April hits and I get COVID. Had to happen sometime, right? So I was on spring break, got COVID, and I was out for a week, and when I came back, I was tired, I was exhausted, and Emo was missing. My troll son, the one my dad had given me. I was mad, I was livid. And I could have done an investigation and called it, an Amber Alert or Troll Alert, but I didn't. What I did is I asked the students to listen to me. I sat them in a circle every period, and I said, look, I know he's not real, but my dad gave him to me. I write children's stories about him, and he matters. And I know you have something that matters to you, so bring him back home. Then I put flyers all around with a reward, small reward, not too much, I won't tell you how much. And I waited. And then 3 days later, one of my students, I won't use his name, walked up and he was like, yo, Miss Nance, I got your little man in the backpack. Somebody gave him to me to give to you. And I look in there, and there's Emo. I start bawling, and kids start bawling. We're like, Emo's home. He's like, yeah, I'm home. I can't tell you who did it, though. So, anyways. But what I will say is, I learned more in this year than in 20 years of teaching. And it's because I was listening, and I was teachable. And students have so much to teach us if we just listen. They're resilient, they're strong, they're wise. So that student, Oriana, who became like a school daughter, like many of my kids, I had asked a lot of students to submit to literary journals, and because we had written so much, we had stories, rap, songs, poetry, and Oriana, of course, she held me to the fire. She's like, if you submit, I'll submit. I was like, you go, girl, touche. So I was like, okay, let me dust off a poem, and I put circles over circles, and to a literary journal, and Oriana did Daffodils in the Wind to a literary journal, and then in February we were both published in the same literary journal, on opposite page. So, you know, the teacher becomes a student becomes a teacher. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. We love your story. It's wonderful. Our next presenter is Carolyn. And Carolyn Snow is an elementary teacher in Riverside and an aspiring writer. She writes poetry and short stories. She enjoys spending time with her family and especially likes taking her granddaughter to the park and to the beach. Come on up, Carolyn.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if y'all are like me, but I grew up in the 60s. Come of age, right? I'm 9, 10 years old, 8 years old. And the neighborhood where I lived, there were two sides of the bridge. Okay, so there was our house on this side, a big, huge, scary-looking suspension bridge right here, and then the park, the school, the neighborhood, all of my friends lived on the other side. Nobody wanted to cross the bridge alone ever, okay? Especially at night, if it was raining, if it was a full moon, nobody wanted to cross the bridge alone because the bridge moved as you walked across it, right? It swayed back and forth. And your thought is, okay, I'm going to run across this bridge. I won't be scared. That's even scarier, right? Because it sways more. So one Saturday afternoon, I'm outside playing. Nobody on my block wants to play. So I figure I'll go play with my friends across the bridge. It's sunny outside. What can happen, right? So go across the bridge. And back then, you could go by yourself. You didn't have to tell your parents where you were going. Your mom just said, when the street lights come on, be home. Don't let me have to come look for you, right? Because you see mama come across the bridge with her slipper in her hand and forget it, and done. So I go across the bridge. I'm playing with my friends all day, and it's getting kind of cold and cloudy, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to go home soon. They're like, okay, do you want us to walk you? So I'm like, yeah, walk me to the bridge, because I know y'all don't want to cross the bridge. Just walk me to the bridge and I'll go home. So we start walking, and so the park was humongous, right? And to me, I mean, the park seemed like it was like, I don't know, 3 football fields long. It probably wasn't even that long. So we started walking across the park, and it's starting to get cloudy outside. Okay, and so the more we walked, you know, the wind is coming up a little bit. Now, keep in mind, we would walk long distances back then. So now it's cloudy, it's windy, and we're not even out of the park yet, right? So keep walking, keep walking. Pretty soon my friends are like, you're going to have to go from here. We're going back home. I'm like, okay, I got this. I can do it. So I'm walking. All of a sudden I get pelted by a raindrop. Oh, goodness gracious, it's raining. Okay, so I'm like, keep walking. I got on a sundress because when I left the house, it was sunny. It wasn't, you didn't need a jacket or anything. So walking, then the rain starts coming. All of a sudden, it's raining. I'm like, oh, it's raining hard. So I start running. I'm like, let me hurry up and at least get to the bridge so I can cross it before the wind starts. Running. The rain is, it's like a thunderstorm all of a sudden. It's raining like crazy. So I thought, okay, do I chance it? Do I, just kind of wait it out and then cross the bridge? What do I do? My parents don't even know, like, where I am. And there were no cell phones back then. There was a payphone, okay? If you needed to call somebody, you went to the payphone. If you didn't have any money, you press 0. Operator comes on the line. May I help you? Yes, I need you to call my mom or whatever you would tell them. Anyway, payphone was across the bridge too, right? So either way, I got to cross this bridge, either to go home or get to the payphone. So now it's really, really, really raining. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just stop at Brenda's house. Brenda's my oldest sister's friend. They're in high school, right? They go to high school. I'll stop at Brenda's house and stay there for a little bit. She won't tell my mom. She won't tell anybody where I am. I won't get in trouble. So I'm running up to Brenda's house. I finally get there, and I'm like, I'm not going to go in there. I'm just going to stay out here on the porch and wait till it stops raining. So I'm breathing hard. because I've just got finished running. So I'm breathing, all of it. And I'm leaning on her door, right? All of a sudden the door opens and I fall through. "What you doing here, child?" says Brenda. I'm like, I just came from the park. "Where's your sister?" I went to the park by myself. She said, "Girl, get yourself in here right now. Let me get these wet clothes off of you, and we'll, if it rains, I'll get you home." So I go in there. She gives me these big clothes to wear because I'm 9 years old, right? I can't fit. She's a high school kid. Gives me these big clothes where I change my clothes. And she says, "You were actually going to try to cross the bridge yourself." I said, "I was, because I wanted to get home before my mom got there." She said, "Just lay down and rest." Okay. So we're watching TV. I don't know, Ed Sullivan or something was on. Y'all remember Ed Sullivan? He was on. So we're watching TV. And the next thing I know is, Carolyn, wake up. I'm like, okay, I don't know, that's my mama's voice. So I wake up and my mom's standing looking over me. And I'm frightened, right? She goes, "It's okay, honey, don't worry about it." She said, "I'm going to take you home." And she said, "Brenda called me to tell me that you were here because we were looking for you and we didn't know where you were, right?" And she said, I just came to take you home." I said, "Am I in trouble?" She said, "No." And she started laughing, and like only a mom can, right? She said, "No, why would you be in trouble? You just went to the park to play with your friends." I said, "But I wasn't back before dark." She goes, "There's no way I would expect you to cross the bridge on your own." Anyway, Mom scoops me up like only a mom can, right? At that point, you just feel loved, and you're like, "Oh, my mommy came to get me." And she takes me, puts me in the car. Big old long car, probably like her mom's, Sabrina. And she said, "We'll be home in a minute. I just got to stop by the store." She goes by the store, gets me my favorite thing in the whole world, hot chocolate, right? Remember the little packages of hot chocolate? So I didn't know she had it till we got home. So we get home, she goes, "Here, I made you something." She handed me this hot chocolate in a cup. It was wonderful. My mommy came to get me. I didn't get a whooping, okay? And I got some hot chocolate. Lesson learned, never leave home without my friends or my sisters, and never try to cross that bridge on my own. Thank you very much.
That's such a great story, Carolyn. The part about your mom made me have a little tears. Made me think about my mom. That was wonderful. Our next presenter is Karen. Karen is married for 32 years to her high school sweetheart. Together, they've raised 6 children, of which the last 2, which are twins, just turned 18. And so now, officially, Karen is an empty nester. Having just received her Master's of Social Work from Cal State University, San Bernardino, she is on to new adventures. Karen likes to sing and is a local KJ close to her home in Crestline, and is new to live storytelling. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight, supporting everybody. It's great. So it's late. So it's in the late 60s, and my brother and I are between the ages of about 3 and 5. We live in a small Midwestern town in Ohio. My brother and me, my mom and my dad. And my dad walks out on the family, divorces my mom, and so now she's a single parent. So she looks for work in a small Midwest town in Ohio, and she goes for a sales job with a company called Vanguard that sells fire alarm systems to people in their homes. Well, we don't hire women, they told her. Not for a sales position anyway. Do you want a secretary job? No, she says. I'm a single mother and I'm raising children on my own. No, I'll take that sales job, thank you. So she convinces this company to hire her, and not only does she become the first woman salesperson for the company, but she went on to outsell many of her male counterparts. So she's a single parent and she works full-time, so now she needs a babysitter. She puts an ad in the local paper, and it gets answered by two young teenage girls, Mary and Kathy, and they're sisters. And she hires them, and they start babysitting for us. It was often that my mom would get calls in the middle of the night to go down and pick the girls up because their dad was out pimping them out at bars for alcohol. So she went down there and she pulled these girls out of the bar, probably about 15 and 16 years old. Well, she took legal custody of those girls, and she moved all four of us kids to California because she was just too big for that small Midwestern town. So now it's about the late 1980s, and I'm in my early 20s, and my mom must have noticed that we had similar philosophies about life and the world, because she introduces me to the Metaphysical Self-Awareness Foundation. It was out in the valley where she worked, and we attended there weekly. We took classes and workshops. My mom honed her skill as an astrologer. She could read your whole astrological chart. She could read tarot cards. She became a metaphysical minister, and she ministered to many. One of the basic kind of foundational philosophies that we shared was that the soul incarnates into this world, into the physical realm, into a physical body in order to evolve and grow really more in love, right? And I guess that's all I have to say about that. So this was a philosophy that we shared, right? It was, and that when the body dies, that the soul just goes on to another realm, right? It exists, and not only does it exist and still evolve and grow, but it can also support those left here in the physical realm. So now it's early August 2021, and the hospice nurse that's now coming to my mom's apartment daily has told us that it's going to be any day now. My brother's spending time with her, so I run to do some errands, and he messages me and he tells me that he's going to go, and so I head back. I go into her apartment and I walk through the bedroom door. And I walk up to her bed, and it's a little bit dark inside. It's about 6 o'clock in the evening. It's a little dark in there. I say, "Hey, Mom, can I get you anything?" And she's not responsive, and her head's tilted a little bit to the right. And upon further investigation and looking a little harder, I notice some kind of fluid coming out of her mouth. I quickly grab a tissue, and I run over to the side of her bed, and I say, "Oh my God, what is that?" And I begin to wipe it up, and I tell her to hold on, that the nurse is coming, just hold on. But then I just had a realization that it's happening right now. So I lay down in the bed next to her, and I make sure that our arms are touching each other because I want her to know that I'm there. And I tell her, "It's okay, Mom. It's okay, we love you, and it's okay to go." And her chest heaves a couple of times as though she's like gasping for air. And then it's still and quiet. And she's gone. And honestly, as hard as it was for my strong mother to be vulnerable, in that moment, I think it's the most vulnerable you can be. And I'm so grateful that she waited for me. And that she shared that moment with me, that really intimate moment. So now it's a couple weeks later, I'm back at school, and it's my next to last semester, and we get assigned a group project, and we get assigned a few people to do the group project with. And I exuberantly share my ideas for this group, right? I got all these ideas and all these things going, and they're a little out of the box and they're a little risky. I wonder where I get that from. And I get sort of these weird looks like, "Oh, oh no, Karen, I don't think that's going to work. I don't know. Not a good idea. And I feel so vulnerable. I feel so hurt. I feel a little bit angry. And I go home that night and I wonder why not one of them has called to apologize to me for hurting my feelings so badly. And this feeling, I can't seem to shake it. I don't know exactly what it is. It sort of feels like an open wound. It sort of feels like this vulnerability. I can't seem to shake it, and it stays with me for days. That Saturday, I go to drive back to Santa Monica to take care of more things at my mom's apartment. And I stop to get an oil change, and they tell me it's going to be about 30 minutes or so. So I walk across the boulevard to head for the market just to kill some time. And all of a sudden, I feel my mother. I feel her so strongly and so overwhelmingly that I just break down in the middle of the boulevard, and I'm sobbing and crying, and I'm thinking, this is a weird place for this to happen. I'm walking across the middle of a boulevard, but you know, I never deny my feelings. I just go with it, right? So I'm just in it. I'm feeling it. I feel my mom. I feel her so present, so with me right now, and the impression that I get, and I feel like it's so interesting when you hear spirit or when you feel spirit. I don't think you really hear them, but you feel them. And the sense that I felt from her was that she was telling me that what I was feeling didn't belong to me, and that it kind of belonged to her, or she wanted me to give it to her, or she took it from me. And I feel like in that moment, she healed me, she helped me, she took that from me. And I knew that it was something that I was taking personal, and as we know from the 4 agreements, life isn't personal, right? So, walking back to get my car, I felt like I was standing up a little taller. I felt like my shoulders were back a little further, and my stride was a little more strutty. And I was like, yeah, cool. Thanks, Mom. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. We always love your story. It's so touching. Okay, right now we'll take a 10-minute break. If anybody needs to use the ladies' or men's room or get us some water or some more fruit kebabs or something, then I'll see you in 10 minutes. And the restrooms are right out there. And the women's is straight ahead and the men are right down the hallway. See you in 10 minutes. Okay, everyone, we're going to get started again if we could get settled in. I was supposed to tell you at the top of the show to turn your cell phones down, but so far we haven't had any cell phone buzzing, but if you could just turn them down, that would be great, just in case. It's getting to be around dinner time and stuff like that, and our families will be checking in and buzzing, where are you? So our next presenter is Nicole. Nicole Cloran is the founder and creative director of Puppets a la carte, where she uses puppets to feed the imagination. She is a resident artist here at Riverside Studios and loves partnering with other artists and organizations. Nicole holds a PhD. I told you, someone's calling for dinner. Like, Mom, where are you? It's dinner time. Nicole holds a PhD in higher education and an MA in American Studies from the College of William and Mary and a BA in English from the College of Holy Cross. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Thank you for my people who came out to support me and everyone who's here today. So close your eyes, if you wish, and imagine with me pink sand beaches, warm water with colorful fish, fresh mango, sweet bananas, and coconut that you can eat right from the trees around you. You can open your eyes. Does it sound like paradise to you? Maybe, maybe not, but it did to me. When I was 14, my mom and I met up with my Uncle Günther from Germany and headed to the Bahamas. An exotic and beautiful vacation location for us. Now, the word exotic implies a colorful display of otherness. And if something is exotic to you, it is unusual to you. So no one thing can actually be exotic. It's a matter of perception and perspective. So there we were, an adventurous mom, a pasty middle-aged German whose idea of snorkeling was to keep his feet flexed and his snorkel submerged under the water, and me, a super shy teenager. I was so shy that when we went to a restaurant and I was thirsty, I could not ask for a glass of water. My sister would do that for me. But alas, my sister was not here on this trip with us. And so I was not only going to be really, really thirsty, I was also going to be totally bored because my mother and Onkel Günther had adult things to talk about. So what was I going to do? Well, I made friends with a stray dog on the beach. This was a big deal to me because I always wanted a pet, as my kids know, and I never had one. So every morning I would meet up with this dog and it would follow me around on the beach, and it was the perfect companion for a shy girl. I also boogie boarded, and Uncle Günther joined me. He was better at this than he was at snorkeling, thank goodness. And then there was Rebecca, my puppet monkey. Now, I had loved puppets all my childhood. I was shy and spent time in my room playing with my stuffed animals, my many stuffed animals, my many stuffed animals, who all came to life with their unique personalities. Rebecca is a hand puppet. She's made of faux fur, and she has long, dangly arms and legs with a little bit of Velcro attached to her hands and feet so she can cling to my neck and my waist. And in 5th grade, I did a little research and determined that she was a mix of orangutan and chimpanzee. And then I noticed decided she was a naturalized American citizen, having been adopted from Korea. Being a first-generation American, people's origin stories interested me, and I noticed a little tag on her back, and it said, "Made in Korea." So that was added to her passport that my sister lovingly made for her, and with which we had much fun going through customs pre-9/11, getting a kick out of the customs officers who were either delighted and called their buddies over, or just gave us this glare and slid the passport back to us. Like, don't waste our time. So that was Rebecca, and I loved playing with her. But as much as I loved her, I was never, ever going to take her out in public anywhere near where I lived, because the thought that a classmate might see her, me with her, was just mortified me. But on vacation in another country was another story. And I was not shy around my family. And I loved to ham it up in front of my Uncle Gunther's camera. So he had his video camera with him on vacation all the time, just like I had my puppet with me on vacation all the time. He would take out the camera and he'd want to video everything, and this is a hobby he picked up from my Opie, his dad, who had an 8mm camera and would make movies, old-time movies. My mother grew up with that, and she hated that camera because she didn't like being directed to walk this way and turn her head and do it again for the camera, please. So she was tolerant of my uncle and supportive when he wanted to film the natural surroundings and the architecture, but she was very sensitive about filming other people and very adept at avoiding the camera herself. Harbor Island is only 3 miles long, very small, and to get anywhere we would just walk, and we wanted to go to the market. So Gunther picked up his video camera to capture the local color, and we headed to the market. To get there, we had to walk through the neighborhood. The island was so small, there was no other way to get there. You just walked right through a neighborhood. So he's filming, and we see chickens running around in the front yard. And we see children running and playing tag. And we see moms sitting on the front stoop, snapping their green beans, preparing dinner. And they're shouting some directives at the kids, and they're answering some questions from inside their house, and they're basically multitasking like moms all over the globe. But as we enter into this space, we start to feel out of place. And my mom says, "Gunther, put the camera away." And the mom stares hard right into our eyes, and we keep walking, and we feel those eyes on our back as we keep walking, and our shoulders slump. And we realize we're seen as the rich white tourists who are here for a week. We're going to ooh and ah and snap some pictures and hopefully buy some trinkets to stimulate the local economy, but we're not really going to gain any understanding of the soul of this island. And this made me sad, and it made my mom and my uncle uncomfortable, so we hurried on to the market. A couple of days later, we wanted more fruit, and we wanted to go to the market again, so we had to walk through the neighborhood again. Uncle Gunther left his camera behind, but I took Rebecca with me. And we walked down the street, and she clung to me in fear. Those chickens, she didn't want them to peck her. And she stared right back at those moms who were staring at us. And then we noticed there were 2 kids behind me, and they were looking at Rebecca, and she was looking at them. And they were giggling and pointing, and they called 2 more of their friends over, and those 4 made so much noise that another 4 kids came, and before I knew it, I had a gaggle of like 9 or 10 kids running behind me, and they were giggling and pointing and laughing and arguing. And finally, one little girl got up the pluck to say, "Is that monkey real?" This is a question Rebecca still grapples with today. And I gave an evasive answer, and they argued some more, and then the older kids had this smug, knowing look on their face. And they go, "That's a puppet." But the little kids could not be convinced. They were sure that that was a real monkey. So these kids followed us all the way to the market before their parents called them back. And when I turned around to say goodbye, some of the moms were in the group, and I totally forgot that I was shy, and I had a big grin on my face. And I looked at this mom, and she had a big grin on her face. And I realized that this puppet had brought out the humanness in both of us. And the locals had experienced something exotic in their front yard, and the tourists had noticed that this was not an exotic island, but something familiar, a beautiful place full of beautiful people. This experience directly influenced my puppeteering journey. it was the first time that I noticed how puppets can open up a world of wonder and surprise in which we can all learn from each other. And I am just tickled to be able to tell you that Rebecca now has her own show. It's called Into the Soup with Rebecca, and it airs occasionally to dozens of classrooms in the Coachella Valley, thanks to the McCallum Theater Education Program. And when I go to perform with Rebecca, I remember this experience. And I remember we went one more time to the market, and I was a little bit disappointed because none of the kids were out until we got to the school. And all of a sudden, all the kids stopped what they were doing, and they ran to the fence, and they started pointing, and they were shouting, and I still hear them in my head today. There goes the lady with the monkey! Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I love your story. It's just great. It's so wonderful and so delightful. And I've never gone to the island, so I'm closing my eyes and thinking about the pink beaches. I can't wait. Anyway, our next presenter is Robert. Robert is, after teaching high school in Riverside for 34 years, Robert Morrell retired and has written his third play and become obsessed with baking cakes and bread. Come on up, Robert.
My story is called Getting Trashed. And you might be looking at me and thinking, that does not look like a guy that gets trashed. Let me take you on my journey that begins when I was a little kid and the target of every bully's taunt and fist. I was the awkward, needy, geeky, effeminate, fat little boy who didn't fit in from the family that did not fit into the neighborhood. We were the poorest on the block. And Mom was a very, very dark-skinned Italian who was frequently compared to the actress and singer Lena Horne. And I cannot tell you just how problematic that was in the 60s in the South. So I was the outsider kid from the outsider family who desperately wanted to fit in. And I got it in my little head that if I worked hard and if I did things for people would like me, right? So I started helping the kids on the block with their chores. Heck, I did their chores for them. And I went to their parents and offered to shovel their walks and rake their leaves because then they would like me too, right? So take those early childhood experiences and put them in a shaker and add a splash of anxiety, a jigger of OCD, a couple of dashes of depression, and garnish with a twist of autism, and you have my comorbidity cocktail. Because I was so drunk on this cocktail, it took me a very, very long time to realize that my theory of if I work hard and do things for people, then people will like me, didn't work. It didn't even work at work. At work, some of my colleagues resented me because I could do more than they could, faster than they could. I had one of my bosses say to me, well, he didn't say it. He yelled it in my face with the vein in his forehead throbbing. You know what I think? I think you get here before everybody else and stay until the end of your workday so you can lord it over everybody. No. I come early and stay until the end of my contracted day because I have more work than others because you keep putting more on my plate. It took me so long to realize I was being taken advantage of. When there was a new task to do, my colleagues didn't step up because they knew I would. And basically my bosses stopped asking anybody else because it was just easier to come to me because they knew I would say yes and do the job quickly and correctly. I was suffering from the curse of the competent. And you would think that hard work would be valued in a work setting, but not always. And in a social setting, it hardly comes into play at all. No one ever came up to me at a bar and said, hey, can I buy you a drink? You look really conscientious and productive. But old habits, as they say, are hard to smash over the head, dismember, and bury in your basement. I cannot relax. I always have to be doing something. Cleaning, gardening, fixing, exercising, something. Well, I retired in 2019. 34 years of teaching was enough. Thank you very much. And I will save you the math homework. I am 60 and a half. And I got out at the perfect time before COVID and with a golden handshake. But now I had all this extra time on my hand. And because of quarantine, I could not get to the gym for my mandatory 2-hour-a-day workouts. Remember, former fat kid? So one morning, I'm at home and I just need to do something. I decide I'm going to take a walk to Fairmount Park, a place close in proximity, but usually far from my thoughts. And I get down there, and I am disgusted by the amount of trash. But that is something I can fix. So the next day I went down there with a trash bag and grabbers and picked up trash for half an hour, and it was immensely satisfying, like a real-life game of Pac-Man. And that was the start of my getting trashed. At the end of the first week, I was down there for 45 minutes a day, and because of that jigger of OCD, of course, I had to keep track of how much trash I was picking up. On a good day, it'd be about 100 pounds, not including the big ticket items like a waterlogged sleeping bag or a car door. I was down there for 7 months, and I found myself down there for 3 hours and 15 minutes one morning, and I'd only missed 3 days during that entire time. I'd become such a regular that I recognized all the regulars, the daily dog walkers, the joggers, the resident homeless. A few of the swans and geese had taken a liking to me. And the park staff, to thank me, to encourage me, delivered to my house one day an industrial-sized roll of heavy-duty trash bags and a box of gloves. It was like Christmas. This one morning I'm down there, and I come across one of those big black storage totes, and it's full of water. And I look around, there's nobody around. It's before 6 o'clock in the morning. And I start to tip it out, and I hear a thump. I look more closely, there's a turtle in there. I look around, there's still nobody. So I push it over to the edge of the lake. And as I'm dumping it in, that's when a very large, powerfully built man comes charging at me, screaming that he is going to kill me because that is his turtle. Given his agitated state, I did not think it prudent to point out that he probably kidnapped the turtle from this very lake, and I was simply rescuing it and sending it home to his family. He then said he would not kill me if I gave him $25. Not a bad deal, huh? I didn't have $25. I probably would not give him $25, so I just backed away, picking up trash as I went. Since I had started my daily journeys down to the park, my friends had expressed their concern about me being down there so early by myself in the dark. And I understood the concerns, but I wasn't worried. Okay, I was a little worried about the feral hogs. They are real. I have video. See me after. But that day, it changed. It was like a reverse Wizard of Oz. The movie opens with Dorothy in Kansas in black and white, and when she lands in Oz, it becomes color. For 7 months, I've been walking through a Technicolor park, and that day it shifted to the black and white of a gritty film noir. And as the turtle kidnapper is yelling at me from the front, suddenly behind me, some other guy is screaming at me incoherently. And I look around, and literally, coming out of the bushes are about a dozen people I've never seen before, dragging their belongings as if a busload of homeless had been dropped off in the park overnight. I don't know if they were there to yell at me too or to watch the show, but the spell was broken, and for the first time, I was afraid. And that was the last time I went to the park. It took a death threat to break me out of that OCD feedback loop. And I probably should thank the turtle kidnapper. If it weren't for him, I might not be here tonight. I'd still be getting trashed.
Thank you, Robert. I always love hearing your story, and I absolutely love going to Fairmount Park. It's so beautiful. So I'm kind of new in Riverside, so everything's beautiful to me out here. So anyway, our next presenter is Stevie, and our own Stevie, I should say. We introduced her in the beginning. Come on up, Stevie.
I want to make sure you can hear me. It was the later part of 2008, and the economy had just fallen out from underneath our feet, and everyone was standing on shifting sand. I had recently reunited with an ex-boyfriend. His name is Josh. I got his permission to mention his first name. He had been let go from his job, and at the time I was working as a concierge and historic tour guide on the Queen Mary, and week by week my hours were becoming less and less, and we needed to make a change and make some big decisions quickly. I made a phone call to my mom. She was about to depart to Juno, Alaska for her 10th season working as a tour guide in Alaska. And she said, if you go up to Juno, Alaska is one of the only states that are still in the black. You will have any number of jobs waiting for you. So we decided to sell all of our belongings, everything that that remained ours. We stuffed into our 1992 Toyota Tercel, and we took off north along the coast, and we stopped in Sacramento, stayed with some family, went up to Seattle, visited a friend, and then the night after we stayed in Seattle, we were taking off for Canada. We had ferry tickets to get to Juno, by the way, because it's landlocked. You have Juno on your hand. Here's the Aleutian Islands, here's Anchorage. This is all Southeast Alaska, they're all fjords. Juno is on the mainland, but right there in the middle, but it's covered by ice fields. So Juno, I'd say there's 3 ways to get to Juno: by boat or ferry, by a plane, or to be born there. So we were going to drive our car to the ferry, and the ferry we could have gotten on in Vancouver, but for whatever reason we decided to drive. We were going to take the ferry from Prince Rupert, which is about 1,000 miles north of the Canadian border. We leave Seattle that morning, head north towards the border. We knew we had over 1,000 miles to go and just enough time to get there, thinking, what could go wrong? We arrive at the Canadian border, and the custom officers look at us, and then they look at the back seat of our Tercel, where they see every single belonging that we own, and they said, we're going to need you to step out and come with us. We have a few questions for you, thinking this is not a big deal. But then they separated us, and we were in separate rooms. And for the next about 2 hours, different custom officials would come into the room where I was waiting and ask me the same series of questions. How much money do you have? Do you have a job? Where are you going? Why are you here? Not much money. I will have a job if I can get to Juno. I'm here because I have a ferry ticket to get to Alaska, and your country is in between the rest of our country. And then that person would leave, and someone else would come back. Finally, after 2 hours, I find Josh again, and they're like, and he had like one of the original iPhones, and so he was like frantically trying to find the email that had our ferry reservation in it, and with very little cell reception, this was quite a process. Finally, he was able to bring it up and show it to the customs officer. At this point, we have 17 hours left, and she's like, you better get going. You don't have a lot of time. Yeah, we know. So they lead us back outside and we find our car. And over those last 2 hours, they had been meticulously taking apart our car and taking all of our belongings out and putting them on the sidewalk. So we spend the next 30, 45 minutes as fast as we can just cramming the car, repacking it, and we jump in and we take off and we're driving north and we're driving through British Columbia. By the way, it is a beautiful country. And we're panicked, we're full of anxiety, and we're just driving as fast as we can and we're looking out on this tundra, this gorgeous scenery. And then finally the sun sets and we find ourselves on this road. I don't know what it is. I could look it up, but I didn't. But it's a road in Canada, and it's 2 lanes, and it goes straight through the middle of this rainforest. And it was pitch dark black, like as dark as I've ever seen it outside. If there was a moon, it wasn't visible because of how thick the forest was, and the road is very, very narrow. And eventually we do find a gas station and we think we better pull over now because we're not sure when we're going to be able to get another chance to fill up. So we pull into the gas station and it was around 11, maybe midnight, a little after midnight. We didn't need gas necessarily, but this was a precaution. Well, there were no attendants at the gas station, but we think not a big deal. We'll just self-serve. Well, apparently in Canada, in spring of 2009, if there wasn't an attendant at that service pump, you're not going to be able to pump gas. So, well, okay. So the only option is to continue going because we couldn't wait until the sun came up for someone to come to the pump because we would be missing our ferry. So we get back in the car and we start driving and we keep going and the hours keep going by and it's just hours of straight, dark, narrow road with very heavy, thick forest on either side and no other cars, nothing else, just that for hours. And eventually the sun comes up and now we really do need gas in a major way. And the light comes on and I don't know, it seemed like forever. And we didn't know when the next gas station would come. Josh had that original iPhone, but it wasn't very helpful at the time. The GPS it wasn't Google Maps like we know it. We do just roll into a gas station on fumes, and we get there just after they open. I'm like, oh, good, thank goodness. We need gas this moment, and there's people here who can help us. So Josh goes to pay for the gas with his bank card, and it's declined. What? I pull out my bank card, and that's declined, but we have money in it. What is going on? So Josh is now trying to call the bank, and they're like, oh, well, you're in Canada. Yeah, I know. I called you before we left to make sure this wouldn't happen. They're like, oh, not a problem. We'll get it fixed for you. Okay, go ahead. Get some gas. We're good. You're good to go. By the way, that kept happening throughout for weeks. But anyhow, in that moment, it ate up an extra 20 minutes. And by the time we were ready to take off, we had 50 miles yet to go and 45 minutes to do it in. So we get in the car and we're taking off and we're jamming up the road. And oh my gosh, there's a moose on the side of the road, a freaking moose. And I've never seen a moose and I want to see. I would love to pull over and take a photo, but I can't. So we're continuing on. And then at some point we make our way over to the coast. Oh my goodness, we see bald eagles. First sight of bald eagles was on that last leg of the journey. And it was absolutely stunning, but we're super panicked. And we get to the docks, we get to Prince Rupert, and we pull into the port, and we get loaded onto the ferry with less than 10 minutes to go, less than 10 minutes to spare before they were going to lock it up. With the last car on, we pull in, we park, we check into our cabin, we go to sleep. And when we wake up, we go out onto the observation deck and we look out. And we are in Southeast Alaska's Inside Passage. And we're looking out on the fjords with the mist coming off of the trees. And it's absolutely stunning. And we made it. Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Thank you to our storytellers. Congratulations to all of you, those who are returning and those who are doing this for the first time. Thank you to Janine and Katie Porter and Inlandia, to Nicole Cloran, Puppets a la carte, and Riverside Studios. And if you would like to potentially know more about what's coming up, future storytelling events, we've been jamming over some potential dates and times and themes.
So we were thinking maybe the next one we would do will be October. I think you'll be able to reach Inlandia about it. You'll go either on our Facebook or let's see how else. The theme that we're thinking about, since it's kind of fallish and near October time, something enchanted story, or it could be a scary story or something that's kind of different, a little different, kind of Octoberish. So I don't really want to say spooky because I don't want to scare anybody away, but something, kind of nice. So let's see, how else? Is there other way we can reach, anybody can reach us?
To follow Inlandia on Instagram and Facebook, the socials. And then for those of you who are here, we have a sign-in sheet if you would like to sign up for emails so that you can get future notifications.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we would love to have more of you to come and tell stories with us and grow our little Riverside community storytelling group, because storytelling is a really big deal. The other day I went to the Marcy Library. They had a professional storyteller there. I went to see him, and I talked with him, and he told me he would give me some tips, and maybe he would drop in on one of our storytelling events. So that would be really great. His name is Michael D. McCarty, and it was really great. So I'm really excited. I got all his information, and I emailed him and said, please. He said he's going to send us some books and some things about how to have a storytelling group. So I'm excited about that. Yay. So thank you so much for coming out today and spending time with us. And we hope to see you all soon. Also, there's some steel cookies and fruit and things. You guys can take that home if you like to.
Please.
If you want to take some of them.
I have baggies.
Oh, we have baggies for you if you want to take some of the cookies and everything home.
Get the two of you.
All right.
Oh, great.
Very nice. Gorgeous.
Take my glasses off.
All right.
I worked it. Beautiful. Thank you.
Wonderful.
That was a good one.
Yeah, it's right.
How's it feel?
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Good?
Oh, yeah.
Such wonderful stories.
Oh, it was fun.
Loved it. Yeah, I loved
We had a
it.
good crowd, too.
I know.
It was a very good crowd.
Very good. Yeah.
I had to try to reel Stevie in with me. Thank you.
I'm actually, let's do it soon because I'm not back in school until August 23rd.
I just did. It's about 4 or 5 together. Yeah. I want to get some pictures of we're getting it.
Like the one where like the amount of mileage